Welcome to today's Climate Smart Community Workshop. I am Kathy Meany, President of the League of Women Voters of Westchester and your host for today. Today's workshop is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the League's website at LWVW.org. During today's session, all participants will be muted, and we ask that you post all of your questions in the chat room so we can address them accordingly. Since 1920, the League of Women Voters has encouraged informed participation in government. We strive to increase understanding of public policy issues through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. We are an activist grassroots organization whose members believe that voters should play a critical role in their democracy. The League is fully committed to ensure compliance in principle and in practice with the national organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. Membership is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. It is now my honor to introduce today's moderator, Dr. Anila Cherian. Dr. Cherian is a Clean Energy Communities Coordinator on New York CERTA's Clean Energy Communities Program. She has been working to promote local government engagement with clean energy actions aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing energy efficiency and energy cost savings, and improving access to renewable energy services. Dr. Cherian brings over 20 years of experience working as an independent sustainable energy and climate consultant with a range of UN organizations, the Rockefeller Foundation and also the MacArthur Foundation, and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat. Her credentials include a Master of Arts and PhD focused on climate change and energy from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Dr. Cherian is an active community volunteer, and she's the author of Energy and Global Climate Change and is currently working on a new manuscript entitled Air Pollution, Climate Change, and Clean Energy. Dr. Cherian, welcome. I turn the session over to you.
Thank you for your kind words. Now, Kathy, you have to stop screen sharing so I can screen share. That's what it's telling
you.
Thank you, my dear.
You're welcome.
Okay, so happy to be here, everyone, and so happy to see so many lovely faces virtually. And I want to begin by thanking everyone and asking them if you can see my first slide. Can you see it?
Put on full screen.
I am, okay, so I am going to begin with the urgency of now. Okay, why are we here, and why climate change? Well, we are contextualizing two very important programs: the NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program, which is the CEC program, and the New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation's CSC program. Two acronyms that sound similar, but guess what? They are very, very closely integrated. So the immediate aim of this workshop is to inform, engage, and advance progress on both these programs so that Westchester municipalities can continue to play a lead in New York State. And we are so happy and excited to have two of the most advanced clean energy community and climate smart leaders with us today. So you're in for a treat. Now, why are the Clean Energy Communities Program and the Climate Smart Communities Program so important? This is because the CLCPA's goals are real. They're not aspirational. So communities need to understand that these goals are coming fast to us. A 40% emissions reduction by 2030 and 85% emissions reductions by 2050. And 70% of the state's electricity must come from renewable energy by 2030. 100% of electricity supply must be emissions-free by 2040. Municipal leadership and community-driven engagement matters for both programs. So I want to talk to you a little bit about my role as a Clean Energy Communities Coordinator. you will see loading up a series of 13 high impact actions. And as you can see, they range from municipalities adopting a unified solar permit to municipalities taking on New York's stretch, which is an energy efficiency code. But I want you to pay attention to something that has 800 points, and which is the climate smart certification process in here. It's 800 points for any municipality that gets climate smart certification. And this is an example of what I was talking about how the Climate Smart Communities program and the CEC program are very closely integrated. Now, the CEC program has launched a new leadership grant cycle. Across the Mid-Hudson region, there are 48 designated clean energy communities. What does that mean? A designated clean energy community is any community that has completed 4 of those high impact actions. A community that's new to the CEC program and decides to complete the 4 high impact action can earn a grant of $5,000. But the CEC program also affords communities the option to get point-based grants and action grants and bonus grants if your project is located in a disadvantaged community. Important to keep in mind, different pathways to earning grants, but very, very important to also note that this category of action grants includes if the adoption of New York Stretch and the completion of community campaigns can allow any municipality, even one that is not a designated clean energy community, to get a $5,000 grant if you are a population size of under 40,000. So now I see that online we have some communities with us in Westchester that are large. So there the threshold is over $40,000. And as you can see, this is a slide that provides a synopsis of the points-based grants. If you achieve a threshold of 3,000 points, you are a large community, you have a potential of getting $30,000. If for a small and medium-sized community, you have a potential of getting $10,000. But keep in mind the number of awards available: 40 per region, 10 per region when you cross the 4,000 point threshold. And the competition is fierce for the 4 per region with Hastings and Croton. In addition, I want you all to pay attention to the exciting and innovative opportunity to get action grants via adopting New York Stretch and or doing community campaigns. This is really important because community campaigns are a way to engage your municipality regardless of whether you're a high impact and high achieving climate smart and clean energy community. Who do we have here on the leaderboard now? It's the village of Hastings on Hudson. So you're going to hear from the mayor of Hastings on Hudson, but just a few days ago, the leaderboard was the village of Croton on Hudson. So these two communities are fierce competitors. We're going to learn a lot from them. And as you can see, Hastings has completed 13 of the high impact actions, and they have achieved the highest point threshold of 5,000 points, which puts them in the category of getting close to $100,000 in grant money. I want to also quickly review the Climate Smart portal, which is different from the CEC portal. The CSC portal is administered by New York DEC. And when a community goes there, you're going to see a series of 12 high impact, similar to high impact actions, but they're going to be called priority actions. So you're going to have a chance of looking at all of these actions and figuring out which ones work for your community, okay? The important thing to remember is what I began with. The Climate Smart Communities program and the CEC program are closely integrated. There is a nexus. And in this slide, you can actually see what that nexus is. If you do the high impact action of benchmarking within the CEC program, you can actually get points for the CSC. And it is so simple. If you submit your benchmarking high impact within the NYSERDA CEC portal and you get approved, all you need to do is submit that approval email into the CSC portal to get the corresponding points. So this nexus is in the process of being reworked in light of the new leadership round of the clean energy communities. But all of these actions that were there will be improved upon with the addition of New York Stretch and the community campaigns, which will allow communities to get even further along the way on CSC certification. Now, Westchester communities are leading the way. They're leading the way in terms of New York Stretch, which is an energy efficiency standard for the construction of new and renovated buildings. And it allows you to get energy savings of 11% energy reduction costs. So it makes sense, and the village of Hastings on Hudson was the first one to adopt it, along with the villages of Dobbs Ferry and the town of Bedford. Close to 40 Westchester municipalities with support from Sustainable Westchester have submitted and been approved for community campaign scoping documents. And now I want to end by saying there's a lot of resources available. I was a clean energy community coordinator, and I know I've interacted with a lot of you online today, and those that may not be. And so I want you to share this information with the broader community. My colleague Carla Castillo will be available for assistance, and it's free coordinator support to help you get engaged with clean energy communities and the CSC certification process. With that, I want to be able to now introduce these two amazing mayors that we have with us. So I'm going to stop sharing. And begin to introduce the mayors. So Mayor Armacost and Mayor Pugh, I have the honor to introduce both of you because you both personify what energy leaders look like in New York. You may come from some of the smallest villages in New York State, but you are powerful mayors. As it turns out, both mayors are also lawyers. They have a history of forging ahead on sustainability. And interestingly enough, they have a shared laser-like focus on ensuring that their respective villages are amongst the highest achieving clean energy and climate smart communities. Now, I'm not sure whether they are this high achieving because they're lawyers or because of their laser-like focus or because it's a combination of both. I think it is a combination of both, but they also happen to be mayors of the only 2 municipalities in all of Westchester to be silver smart. But you know what? They're the only 2 out of 7 municipalities in all of New York State to have this certification. So Nicola Armacost, the mayor of Hastings, holds a bachelor's from the University of Toronto and a master's from the Osgood Law School. She has served as the mayor for 2 years, and before that, as the village trustee for 9 years. Mayor Armacost's work gives credence to the phrase, local is global and the global is local. She serves to remind us of the transformative role played by dedicated environmental leaders. She is the founder and manager of ARC Finance Limited, a not-for-profit organization that finances clean energy and water in the developing world. She has served as an advisor to a number of solar companies and microfinance organizations that work in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Mayor Armacost is an outstanding champion of the term collaborative competition because she has spurred action amongst my own Rivertown in Dobbs Ferry. Brian Pugh, the mayor of Croton on Hudson, is now serving his 2nd term as mayor. He earned a bachelor's at Oberlin College in economics and history and graduated from Fordham Law School. Remember what I said about both of them being lawyers? When he was a member of the Fordham Journal of Corporate and Financial Law and was awarded the Metcalf Labor Law Prize and named Advocate of the Year by the Unemployment Action Center. Mayor Pugh has been a steadfast champion and steward of sustainability issues through his tenure, including his earlier role as trustee. He serves as a stellar example of a municipal leader who undertook the role and responsibility of being an early adopter of renewable energy and climate responsive action. Previously, he worked as a solar energy industry in a not-profit partnership between the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers and solar developers, where he secured solar installation training for union electricians and drafted legislation to support new investments in solar power. Mayor Armacost, take it away.
You're on mute.
Mayor Armacost is never at a loss for words. So this is quite unusual.
Thank you so much, Anila, for that very lovely introduction. And it is an honor to be here. It's wonderful to share the stage with Croton. I'm not sure if having a background as a lawyer has anything to do with it. Perhaps it's that we're both on the river and we have a hyphenated name that has, you know, on Hudson at the end of it. But whatever the reason is, it's really fabulous to be here. Many thanks for having us, especially you, Anila, and HVRC and Marsha and the League of Women Voters for inviting Hastings to be here on the panel today. Trustee Lambert's going to share some of the details on how we were able to get to silver climate smart community status in under a year. But what I'm going to do is give you a high level strategic overview. And hopefully the main takeaway from the session is that most of you have probably done what's needed to get to bronze already. You just don't know it yet. So a tiny bit of background. When I was first elected mayor 2 years ago, our municipality was already part of both the clean energy communities and climate smart communities programs, but we didn't really understand how the programs worked, and we weren't really participating in or benefiting from them. We'd only completed 5 CEC actions, and we hadn't documented any CSC actions. So we were basically starting from scratch. Over the summer of 2019, we hired an intern to look into the CSC program in more depth. He started to identify what actions we'd done and what might make sense to pursue moving forward. And as I reviewed his work, it became clear to me that the program was potentially quite valuable to us, but it was also incredibly complicated, and it was entirely unfair to have given the task to an intern. The value of the CSC program became more and more obvious over time. It offered ways to systematize and document lots of good work that had happened in the village, most of it undertaken by our amazing volunteers, sometimes over multiple years. It also helped us to benchmark ourselves against other municipalities, most notably Croton, and it provided inspiration for new policies and initiatives we hadn't considered. It also connected us to other municipalities we could learn from and collaborate with. And we actually just launched an Earth Month challenge with our sister municipalities, Ardsley, Dobbs Ferry, and Irvington on grid rewards. And finally, it flagged grant funding that might help us move our clean energy and sustainability agenda forward. I realized that what we needed was a proper, robust strategy with a dedicated group of committed volunteers to implement it. We quickly adopted a resolution establishing a CSC task force, which was actually separate from our Conservation Commission, and Mary will talk a little bit more about that later, and we framed out what its role would be. And the next step was to outline our strategy, which had 4 main prongs. They're really simple. Identify what's been done, document what's been done, select new actions to pursue, and set ambitious goals. Mary's going to go into all the details, but I want to flag a few important things. It's important to develop a delegation strategy to ensure that task force members are working on separate projects and that everyone understands the end goal, really the points you want to get and the timeline. And as you mentioned, Anila, make a point of working out how the CEC and CSC programs intersect. It took us really quite some time to understand that almost all CEC actions were also CSC actions, and to work out we could simply submit the CEC approvals for our CSC actions. And then when pursuing new ideas, it's important to identify ones that would be relatively uncontroversial and easy to accomplish without too much effort from volunteers or staff. For us, an example would be our shade structures policy. Who doesn't love trees, which are the main ways in which you can establish shade structures in the village. Policies that could be done in a short period of time, policies or actions. So one of those for us was swapping out all our traffic lights for LEDs. In our village, we actually have 4 traffic lights. So it took our DPW literally 2 hours to do that. And then other actions that are strategic for the municipality. So for us, that was adopting the CCA and New York Stretch, which are both CEC and CSC actions. And for New York Stretch, as Anila mentioned, your municipality will be awarded cash for adopting it. Looking back, there are a few things we only understood in retrospect, and hopefully these will help all of you to be more efficient than we were. It's important to do enough mandatory and priority actions for each stage, build in buffer points, and plan tiered submissions for the January, April, and July submission dates in case points get rejected. And Mary will speak about all of this more. Also read and reread the requirements and seek advice on things that are confusing or complicated. Do some actions early as they help set the stage for other actions, and make sure you save all the invoices, take photos, and keep evidence from the outset of your various projects. It turns out that getting CSC bronze and silver status had some unexpected benefits. For example, I was reviewing our 2020 Moody's issuer comment and saw that our bronze designation was mentioned. But the main benefit is engaging our community in a broad range of actions that will make a material difference to our community and ultimately our planet. In closing, we view the Climate Smart Communities program as an ongoing opportunity for our village. We firmly believe you never arrive at a point where you can tick off climate change on your list of to-dos, and there's always going to be much more that needs to be done. And we owe it to future generations to do as much as we can today to ensure resiliency for our community in the future. Enjoy the session, and I do hope it's useful to you. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Trustee Mary Lambert, who has been passionate about protecting the parks and open spaces of Hastings and helping the village mitigate and adapt to climate change for many years. She served as co-chair of our Climate Smart Communities Task Force and is going to tell you about some of the projects undertaken by the task force over the last 2 years. She was born and raised in New York City and moved to Hastings in 2005. She holds a BA from Yale University and an MBA from Columbia. She has been the executive director of the Whedon Family Foundation, specializing in biodiversity preservation, and has held senior management roles at various corporations, including Volta Charging, the country's most utilized EV charging network. And currently she has her own marketing consulting business, Closed Loop Consultants. One of my cleverest acts as mayor was to appoint Mary to the Hastings Board of Trustees in January of 2020, where she's focused much of her time and energy on sustainability issues. I give you Mary Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and for your attention. I know this is an important topic to me, and hopefully it is to all of you as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about the value of the Climate Smart Communities program, as well as the Clean Energy Communities program. To start, and I think most of you would agree, climate change is the most important issue facing our generation. So what can we do about it? I think both of these programs provide remarkable resources. They provide a rubric, and they provide support for achieving climate goals. So I think it's important to mention that by incenting change and making it a bit competitive and tying the results to grant opportunities, the program really inspires volunteers and staff alike towards this common goal, and changes that can over the years become part of the fabric of your local government. And those resources are not only the support staff. There's tons of great information in the action descriptions. There's links to remarkable reports and great papers embedded in those descriptions. And there's submissions of hundreds of municipalities at this point that have completed these actions. And many of the larger ones have actually paid consultants to do the work. So it's definitely really valuable work that you can leverage. So diving right into the program, as mentioned, establishing a CSC task force is one of the most important things to do at first. I think the mayor referenced the fact that we had actually, as a village, done many of the CSC actions before we ever documented them, in part because our Conservation Commission didn't see its role as completing this process. They had other important priorities, and they didn't have the bandwidth to take this project on. It wasn't until the mayor had the wisdom to establish the CSC task force with volunteers from a diverse set of backgrounds and skill sets that the process really took off. One of the first things that the group did was to review what actions had already been done. So for instance, if your town has a farmer's market or a comprehensive plan or a complete streets policy, you're already well on your way. We also looked at the program goals in light of municipal goals. So for instance, does your fire department already have goals around emergency preparedness? Or maybe your village manager is already keen on reducing electrical costs, or your mayor is gung-ho to increase resilience in your downtown. These all align nicely with the CSE actions. So I encourage you to find out what your local government, elected officials, boards, and commissions already want to achieve and find actions that tie into those goals. So in review, questions to keep in mind: what have we already done? Where is the low-hanging fruit? What best aligns with our emergency preparedness, energy efficiency, conservation, and sustainability goals? What did we plan to do anyways? And what can we leverage and learn from? So the team, the quantity of volunteers on your team depends really on how ambitious you want to be. We had a team of 10, including liaisons to 3 different committees for our 4-month sprint to bronze. Many of these actions had already been done, as the mayor noted, so there was really an emphasis more on documenting in the beginning. This can be quite tiresome, so watch out for burnout. We found the key village staff members to work with were the village manager and any admin staff she or he might have, department heads, head of the DPW, police, fire, technology, and an emergency team if you have one. And the Board of Trustees, and last but perhaps most importantly, the mayor. We've been so fortunate to have a highly competent, competitive, and collaborative mayor, as has been noted, as our leader in these efforts. So hopefully you have a mayor with those 3 C's. The actions themselves. So I can't stress enough the importance of starting the documentation process early, setting up a folder tree, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and a plan. And you could decide on anywhere from 5 to 20 actions that you'll focus on for the upcoming cycle. In our case, we looked closely at towns and villages with similar populations, size, resources, and natural assets. In our case, the Hudson River villages of Croton, Piermont, and Dobbs were all particularly relevant and helpful. Then we did an informal cost-benefit analysis. We looked at the value of the action to the village, the time involved, and of course the point value for the action under consideration. And I encourage you to plan ahead. Some actions are tied to others. Either they have overlapping elements or they're sequential. So it's important to get a lay of the land before doing your project plan. We also looked not only at who's responsible and accountable for the various actions, but also who should be consulted and who should be informed. So some additional tips. This is a bit in the weeds, but the requirements are sometimes sprinkled throughout the sections. So for instance, I would encourage you to read sections A through D and not just focus on the actual requirements section, E. And to reach bronze, you must have both mandatory and priority actions, as they were mentioned. So keep that in mind in your planning. And as she also mentioned, submit a bit over what you need in points in the anticipation that some of your actions will be rejected. For instance, we've submitted twice for innovative actions and twice been rejected. We've also submitted twice for brownfields, and it wasn't until we really understood what the committee was looking for that we finally were accepted. So this comes to play later on, but also keep in mind that actions expire and with them the points, so you'll have to make up these points sometime in the future. Lastly, as part of institutionalizing the changes, many actions call for updates. So you'll ideally want to locate a point person in the local government who can be in charge of these updates, and mark your calendars and don't forget when these yearly updates come along. Okay, a little bit more about our story. This is our team. We've been fortunate enough to have, and I should say this is only part of our team. I didn't include everyone because I couldn't find photos for everyone, but we've been fortunate enough to have a passionate group of writers, researchers, gardeners, consultants, activists, finance and energy experts, and project managers, led by our amazing mayor, who's made climate sustainability one of her highest priorities. So as noted, we first looked at really all of the actions. We set up this spreadsheet, which is really the rubric of the program. It includes all of the actions so we could compare them next to each other. So we looked at, for instance, the point value. We looked at whether they're priority for silver. We looked at funding availability and whether they're tiered points. And we had time requirements built into this as well. So we could really see what made sense to do at what stage of our strategy. Then we honed in on our actual plan. And here's a snippet of our plan on the left. You'll see that we have status, the owner, the points that we anticipate getting from this, and then just notes. And on the right, you'll see our CSC Google folder tree I mentioned earlier. We just set this up in Google folders by pledge element or action category. And we encourage the action owners to upload documents as progress was made on each action, not just leaving everything till the end, but really doing uploading continuously, since it's such a big part of the project. Here are a few of the major policies, reports, and projects that we completed. You'll see that the first 6 are all policies, ordinances, or resolutions. We found it was more effective to an extent to focus more on policy changes during COVID, but we're revising our strategy as in-person events are more feasible. So we're pleased to be recognized for our progress. I think we began in earnest, the mayor mentioned, in the summer of 2019, but really we got the task force rolling in September, achieved bronze in February of 2020, and silver in the summer of 2020. We plan to resubmit again in July to maintain our silver status because, as mentioned, many of our points have expired as they do. We're also pleased to be recognized for our heat emergency plans since it was one of the first to be submitted, and we hope it will prove to be a helpful model for other municipalities. As mentioned, CEC and CSC are closely aligned, as Anila said, and this is a snapshot of NYSERDA CEC Community Scorecard page. We have achieved 13 actions as part of the CEC, and because of the significant overlap between CEC and CSC, we were able to jump relatively quickly to the top of the New York State rankings for the moment. So here's a more complete list of the groups that were involved with this process. We really had a lot of help from various village groups, and we are incredibly grateful for their help. And we also worked with a lot of nonprofits. There is a large and growing list of NGOs working to accelerate climate progress, many of whom will help you for free. So encourage you to reach out to them. And we are also very thankful for their partnership and the help they provided us. So in closing, this program and climate work in particular, I think it's complicated and it's ongoing, but it's obviously critical. And I think this program provides a great support system. Personally, it's been incredibly rewarding working with this program, and I'm a huge fan. I think it provides a mechanism for positive change. It's an acknowledgement that we can all be part of the solution. And it provides a concrete plan to allow us to focus on many of the most important initiatives that will benefit our communities, our kids, and our world moving forward. So thank you for your attention and your interest, and to the League of Women Voters for holding this event. And now I will hand it over to Mayor Pugh.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the League of Women Voters, the New York State DEC, and NYSERDA. I'd like to echo what Anila said earlier about the collaborative, competitive nature of both the CEC and CSC programs, the Clean Energy Community and Climate Smart Community programs. And I think that those are real assets in laying out a path for communities to achieve sustainability on their own terms. Under our federal system and our home rule state, both state and local governments have considerable power. And with that power comes responsibility, not least of which is to address the challenge of climate change, which, as mentioned, is really the challenge of our time. And I agree with Mayor Armacost that I don't think it's a coincidence that Croton-on-Hudson and Hastings-on-Hudson are both leaders in this area. We're both river towns, and I think our constituents, our residents, have a deep appreciation of our natural environment. And Croton-on-Hudson certainly has a long history of environmental activism by its citizens. And as the local government, we try to reflect those values. And we've been the home of a number of local environmental triumphs, going back to the capping of the Croton on Hudson landfill at Croton Point Park. And more recently, we've been working using the CEC and CSC roadmap to make progress on climate change. We've been a climate smart community since 2009 and a CEC community since 2017, and achieved a silver designation in the climate smart community area in 2020. And until very recently, had the most significant actions completed under CEC. Congratulations to Hastings on retaking the lead. And I agree with some of the lessons highlighted by the Hastings experience, which is, this is something we've done in Croton on Hudson as well, which is, I think you need a committee really focused on this issue. Since 2009, we've had a sustainability committee that's distinct from the Conservation Advisory Council, which is primarily focused, I would say, more on environmental conservation, while the Sustainability Committee is really focused on renewable energy and steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're very blessed to have a active and engaged group of citizens here with tremendous knowledge and technical expertise in this area. This committee is made up primarily of local volunteers with experience in STEM, people with engineering and technical backgrounds who have devoted a considerable amount of their time to serving our community and helping to make it a cleaner and greener place. And of course, this team is led by Lindsay Auden, the technician and magician that turns our goals into material gains for the community. I really can't say enough good things about Lindsay Auden, but I will try. Since 2015, Lindsay has chaired Croton's Sustainability Committee. He is our CSC coordinator and CEC point person. In that position, he has secured for Croton its silver CSC certification and our many points under the CEC program. Since 1996, he has been the president of EnergyWiz Inc., an energy consulting firm serving large energy users, other consultants, government agencies, and energy suppliers. For 8 years before opening EnergyWiz, Lindsay was the energy manager for Columbia University. For 12 years prior, he ran energy services for other engineering and consulting firms. He is a certified energy manager and a LEED accredited professional. Through the Association of Engineers and the City of University of New York, he has taught courses to energy professionals and others on power procurement, electric load profiling, and tariff analysis. His book, On Lowering Your Facility's Electric Rates, was published in 2017 by Fairmount Press. Lindsay has been named Energy Manager of the Year by 3 professional organizations, is a member of the Energy Managers Hall of Fame, maintained by the Association of Energy Engineers, and received many other awards for his energy work. He is also a member of several editorial boards for energy and building-related publications. Over 200 of his columns and articles on energy issues have been appearing in publications such as Engineered Systems, High Performing Buildings, Architectural Record, and Building Operation Management. And now to go into the details of his work on behalf of the Village of Croton on Hudson, Lindsay Auden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me get into screen share here and we'll get started. Moment. Oops, where are we? Here we are. Okay, I'm going to talk about essentially what Croton has done to try to reduce its carbon. Yes, we are definitely a member of the Silver Certification Group. We are one of the 7 in the state and one of the 2 in Westchester County. We are a small outfit, about 8,070 people, but we have big ambitions. We have done many of the studies and the policy actions that were mentioned before by the Hastings people. And we, however, prefer to focus on clean energy efforts. Most of our activities have been done with regard to reducing our carbon footprint. Here's just a quick list of some of the equipment that we have put in. We have focused a lot, not just on the policy actions, which we've done in the studies, but also hard, what you'd call iron in the ground type of changes. LED lighting in the buildings, variable speed drives on the water pumps, solarized, energized, clear fuels, EV chargers, et cetera, et cetera. And here's what we're looking to do in 2021. We have plans to do solar canopies at 2 of our village parking lots, the larger of the 2, and this is our big thing for the next year or two, would be a 4.7 megawatt solar canopy at the Croton train station. This is probably going to take about 2 years, but call back in 2 years and we'll show you what we got. We're also looking at putting in heat pump water heaters in the municipal buildings and a number of residences, air source heat pumps at one of our firehouses, and again, replacing another one of our vehicles with an EV. That'll be our third one. So we have focused a lot on not just the policy part, but the actual equipment part, where we can measure and verify the reductions in greenhouse gases. So what kind of a process did we use to get there? As was mentioned, our sustainability committee was created in 2009 to cut the municipal carbon footprint. We now also do so for our community's footprint. We have 2 other committees, which have been very, very helpful. And from them, we got a lot of the items that we could claim in the CSC program. The Conservation Advisory Council had done various natural resources activities. The Bike Pedestrian Committee had done various transit infrastructure, bike lanes, all those kinds of things. And so since they were already done or mostly finished, we could take those results and bring them in and get the CSC points. Now, our process for picking out the programs and projects that actually reduce greenhouse gases is slightly on the technical side. We look at the total cost of a project, like LED lights or whatever, per avoided metric ton of equivalent carbon per year spread out across a 15-year lifetime. And that way we can prioritize based upon what will have the biggest bang for the buck immediately. We especially look also for activities where funding from non-village sources, and keep in mind both CEC and CSC offer you grants. In some cases it's 50%, some cases it's 100% of the cost. We also look after whatever is available from the utility. And I want to make sure you think about that, because that's the goal and end all here, is to get the money to get the job done to reduce the greenhouse gases. One of our first projects done of that type was the upgrade of all the lighting in all the buildings at the village with LEDs. We got a $50,000 NYSERDA grant to do that. And then later on in 2019, we put in our electric vehicle chargers. These are 2 of them at our municipal building. We've also had them put them in at our train station. And our big one that got finished last year was our 302 kilowatt community solar system. It not only is on the rooftop of our DPW garage, which was a very good asset to use, it also produces $25,000 in rent for our community, a portion of which goes to pay for other projects to reduce the greenhouse gas as well. And these kinds of projects can be difficult to do. They take time, but they get you the points and they get you the reductions in greenhouse gases, which is the whole point of this. Now, in all of these programs, all these projects, there is one very important first step, and that, as you've heard, is to read the manuals before you start any project. Read the instructions, the guidance documents, the fact sheets, the toolkits. And when you're done, read them again. Because as mentioned, some of them were not artfully written. They're all there, but you may have to read them a couple of times to figure out everything that's going on. You may find some parts of the programs are great, but they don't fit your timeline. You have to do something this fiscal year and they want it done before the end of the fiscal year or whatever. Some cases, the CEC&C projects won't work with your local opportunities. Maybe you want to put up a microgrid or something. That's not part of the program right now. So look for those things that match. That way you get them done quickly and you get them done to bring about the points and get the grants to go and do more. If you're unsure about any issues, and as Nilla mentioned, ask for help. You have paid people helping you right now on this, the CSC and CEC coordinators. Get any issues clarified before you waste time on misunderstandings or confusion or whatever. And especially focus your attention on what you're going to do. Focus your resources. Unless you have real staff, like full-time staff, try to work on only 1 or 2 major projects at a time. Doing everything at once, which you're going to feel like doing because there's just so much to be done, that's the same thing as doing nothing well. Focus. Try to match your efforts to the realistic abilities of your organization, your committee, or whatever. It's realistic to go after LEDs in every municipal light fixture, not so much an EV in every garage. That's a real stretch. Look for options that have clear greenhouse gas savings based on measurements, things that you can back up. That'll get you more credibility, not guesswork. It'd be great if we all become vegetarians, but that's hard to measure the results and very hard to verify. Drop unworkable ideas. Everybody has a pet project. This is the kind of thing that can drag you down and waste a lot of your time. You want to make sure that you are going after the things that will save the planet, not your ego. Now, as was mentioned, you have to document everything. To make this more forceful, let me give you an idea. Imagine you had to go to court to prove the results of your work in front of Judge Judy. She's going to ask all kinds of paperwork. You're going to have to come up with everything. You're going to find that merely doing a project is not enough. You have to back it up. Keep in mind that a grant is a commitment to pay you when you have finished the work. You don't get the work ahead of time. You have to be prepared to back up that claim that you actually did it all with work orders, invoices, photographs, and detailed descriptions. You're going to need them when you actually go after the grant money to be reimbursed. To be successful at this, you got to maintain a good paper trail. Work with your Department of Public Works, your contractors, whatever. It's very important to do so. This means, in essence, that you're going to become what we call a project developer. A project developer is a person who goes after an opportunity, a rooftop for solar, for example, finds the resources to deploy it and organizes a way to make it happen. That might be an RFP for a PPA. Oh my God, acronyms. You're going to find this process is like a jigsaw puzzle. In essence, you have to put all these pieces together. And you're going to need to learn this lingo. See all these little pieces at the bottom, each has an acronym. You're not going to need all of them to make a project, but you're going to need some to get them done. If you don't know what these things mean, that's a problem. I will tell you at the end of my presentation a way to learn that stuff. It's always good to begin with something easy so you're not going to fail right off the bat. Here's an easy project. Start by learning and using the data tools that are involved. Benchmarking your municipal buildings using EPA's Portfolio Manager is a really good project to do. You're going to see where the greenhouse gas emissions are. You're going to learn more about how your municipal buildings work and where the opportunities may be. Pursuing energy audits. And keep in mind, you can get money from NYSERDA and or the DEC to actually pay for some of these audits, or at least a portion of them. This is where you pay a professional to come into the building, find the energy usage, the greenhouse gas emissions, and not only in the buildings, your street lighting, your waterworks, your vehicle fleets. You're going to learn a lot of stuff about this. And as was mentioned before, pick the low-hanging fruit. Something like your LED streetlights is a slam dunk. They're on 4,000 hours a year. LED lighting in your buildings is another easy one. These kinds of projects are very good for making early success. They are more than policy, they are real and people can see them. You'll win support for your work. Now, I will warn you that at times when you're working on these programs, it's going to feel a bit like you're trying to climb a steep hill in the dark. That's normal, especially for those of you that are new to these kinds of programs. But let me give you one piece of advice. In all measures of activity in your life and in this process, you'll find that the only way you get to the top is by going uphill. In essence, when you get there, it's a huge kick. You've done something good for the community. You've done something very good for the planet. It's all worth the effort. So in conclusion, let me just say thank you very much for helping to protect the planet. If you want to learn more about this whole process and how to make it happen, especially the projects that cut greenhouse gases, we're giving a climate change boot camp, climate action boot camp on May 15th and the 22nd. It's 2 Saturdays from 10 to noon. It's part of Teton Reservation's ELA program. That's the Environmental Leaders Learning Alliance, which is a co-sponsor of this event. Seats are limited. It does have homework. It's a boot camp, not a sing-along. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you to all the presenters. And now I want us to get ready for the real fun to begin, which is the question and answer session. Thank you to all the participants for posing these questions on the chat session. I want to kick off a question to both the mayors. And you know, Mayor Pugh and Mayor Armacost, it is really quite remarkable and inspirational to see small villages by the picturesque villages, small villages by the banks of the Hudson River, the challenges that you faced and the remarkable strides you've made. My question that I wanted to kick off the question and answer series is, what is the one challenge that you would have not anticipated when you began this process, that you look back and say, you know what, I wish I had done this a little differently? is there one thing that you can guide the rest of us who are beginning the process or trying to recertify? What is the one thing that each of you wished you had? You're both benefited by having Lindsay and Mary, but imagine if you didn't have that. So that's not the answer, but just one challenge that you would, in looking back, that you wished you hadn't done or you encountered.
So Anila, it's not so much what we wouldn't have done, but something we learned is that points aren't everything. So this process is very geared at points, and it's attractive to a particular type of person that probably loved getting gold stars when he or she was 5 or 6. And actually, there are a lot of things that are really important to do that don't involve points and that are outside of the rubric. And so I think that part of the reason we created 2 committees, we continued with our Conservation Commission, but we created a separate committee, is that they wanted to pursue actions that weren't really tied up with the CSC rubric. They wanted to do pollinator pathways. They wanted to do other things that are really important for our village. And we didn't want to kind of squish everything into this maniacal goal, of reaching the largest number of points. So I think that kind of creating space for your volunteers to do what brings them joy, is really important. And we also pursued other things that are kind of more in this space, low embodied carbon concrete. We passed a resolution that's not a CSC action, but it's something we thought was really important. Maybe one of these days we'll get innovation points for that. So I would say, don't be too slavish about the points. Give yourself some freedom to have fun while you're doing this thing that's so important for the planet.
Mayor Pugh?
Sure. So one, going back to Lindsay's point about reading the manual, I would say that sometimes we have to recognize that the manual might not be necessarily, the manual can be larger than what's actually within the 4 corners of the manual. As a lawyer, this is a little frustrating to me, but recently we got tripped up in the bramble bush of the common law, so to speak. And, Mr. Auden was working very diligently to help make another community solar array to be located at a parking lot happen. And then our village attorney says to me, the parking lot is, because it's for a park, is considered to be parkland. And for those familiar with municipal law in the audience, some people are nodding their heads, public trust doctrine. So, and that, that's a trap. There are arguably ways to work around that, but given the time pressures on that project, the economics involved and all that, we had to abandon it because it was just no longer economically viable for the developer who was looking into it. And we couldn't make it work in time with the incentives that were going down. So
Thank you.
That's frustrating, and you've got to be on the lookout for that. I want to give a quick shout out to Senator Peter Harcum for introducing legislation to address that. And one last point is to reiterate what Mayor Armacost said, is something that I wish we'd done more of was to try to think of ways to integrate the grassroots enthusiasm of our residents into our conservation work.
That's a really important point that you both talked about. This piece about integration and the piece about the challenges of the manual, pushing the boundaries of the manual and bringing joy. So I thank you both for referencing that. A question to Mary and Lindsay, and this is coming up a lot in the chat function. A lot of people want to know, you both alluded to the importance of documentation. Is there a way to share with municipalities your amazing documentation strategies? Maybe not at the end of this session, but going forward, because I know you both emphasize that. And Mary, you had your folder tree, and Lindsay, you had your strategy, your crucial piece. There seems to be a need from many of the municipalities to know how to proceed. So that's something that you guys could be very, very influential in helping with. you want to take that question on, either of you?
I'd like to, Mary, you go first.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Lindsay. I was just going to say it's a great point, Anila, and definitely something that I've thought a lot about. It's silly for us all to recreate the wheel, especially that rubric document I talked about. Our interns spent most of the summer, I believe, putting that together. So that's a tool that I think could be useful to other people. It's slightly outdated now. I did put my email address, and I'm happy to share with others our tools. I think also there'd been talk about setting up a chat session where we can ask questions and provide resources to each other. And I think that's a great idea. I'm all aboard of doing that, because I think the more communication, the better. Absolutely.
I'd like to add one thing, that in the Climate Smart community, you can go to the Climate Smart website, which is longer than my arm, so I'm not going to try to read it off to you. And you can actually go and see the documentation that was submitted by every person who's been in the program. One thing we found very handy was to go and look and see how other people got away with certain things we couldn't figure out. And then we said, that's all we got to do is just that thing? Oh, let's just copy that and put our name on it. Bingo, we were done. That's available to everybody in the Climate Smart community program. You can go and look all that up, and you'll see everything that everybody did, and look at the actual PDFs and documentation that they submitted.
So there's this interesting dilemma, and you know, on one hand, both these programs are very documentation specific, but you also have to have the joy. We have Earth Day coming ahead of us. And I'm also seeing questions in the chat session about the importance of things like the Repair Cafe, the importance, and here's another one that I'd like, perhaps the mayors can take on if they would like. You know, both your communities are engaged in community campaigns. That to me is an interesting vehicle for engaging community participation in things like demand response, community solar, clean heating and cooling, and potentially electric vehicles, but from a community joyous perspective, right? Like bring new volunteers in. And then you have what Lindsay and Mary are doing, the shepherding of the documentation, which can be a hard lift. So I would like perhaps Mayor Armacost, if you could talk about a little bit about the joys of things like the Repair Cafe and those other nifty tools. And Mayor Pugh, if you could talk a little bit about the issue of what are the ways in which Croton engages with its communities in this non-documentation specific way, in terms of campaigns and things like that? Because you have such a history, both your communities have such a history of environmental activism. You're both by the banks of the river. You both had big crises with Superstorm Sandy, and there was a lot of learning that went wrong there. So can you talk about being resilient, but also joyful in this push towards climate change?
So on the issue specifically of repair cafes, we had actually, there is one action which is about documenting some public events that you've done within the last year or two. And we'd always included repair cafes. And then it was very exciting to see this year that a specific action was created. It's new this year about repair cafes. And obviously that's so important because it's about reusing and repurposing and mending, all those things our grandmothers loved back in the day. So that's kind of exciting. But I did want to add that one of the things in terms of joy, one of the things that's been really fun that we've been doing is competing and collaborating with our sister villages, Ardsley, Dobbsbury, and Irvington. We created a campaign relating to grid rewards, which is about turning down your electricity usage on specific peak days in the summer. You get a text. And so I said to we're all very good friends with one another. And I said to the other mayors, why don't we set up a campaign where we see how many people we can each get signed up? And the thing that's so brilliant about the community campaigns is you only have to sign up 10 people and you get sent a check from NYSERDA for $5,000. So we have now given one another the gift of not only signing people up for benefits that they will get themselves, but also benefiting the municipality and having fun with one another. We now have to work out what the winner gets and what the loser gets. The mayor of Ardsley says we'll all be wearing Ardsley hats come September. So in our board meetings. But, you know, that kind of a thing is something that's fun and playful and makes this serious issue of climate change something that people feel that they can engage in personally and actually make a difference on at a local level.
Mayor Pugh, I'm wondering if you can answer the question as to, you know, what are the other additional elements that you're doing in Croton and working in partnership with other communities, for example? Because the question that is coming up in terms of clustering some questions on the chat session, people are interested, Mayor Pugh, if you know, if they don't have folks like the Lindsay Ordens of the world, how do you work with interns and or other college-age students? This is a question that I'm seeing quite often in the chat session, and I don't know if Anjali Southoff is able to unmute herself, but she has a very novel. She has a college core, which I'm sure Mayor Pugh and Mayor Armacost would have loved to have. Anjali, can you unmute yourself and share this idea about the possible climate smart college core? Because a lot of questions have been coming up on interns and whether school children and others can be, you know, what villages have used as interns.
Sure, thank you. It's a little bit premature at this point, but I'm in the development stage of trying to build a climate smart community student core. And that is an effort to help communities like ours, you know, who have started the process, but then stagnate due to lack of support and resources or changing levels of support to help with continuity. So, you know, I'd be happy to provide information as it becomes available, but the idea would be to build a coalition across regional universities and have courses, capstone style courses for students to be able to, it provides students an opportunity to be able to engage with communities. And it also provides some momentum for communities that are participating in the program.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
There is a question that is coming up, and I'm wondering if both Hastings and Croton can take it on. Two separate questions. One on the nature of what they call PE action, the natural resources piece, the forestry, the tree planting, the canopy. How much did either of you engage with it, and how was that process? If you would take that question on, please.
I can start there. We actually completed a natural resources inventory, which was a process I highly recommend. We looked at our different ecosystems within the village and really what assets, natural assets we valued in those different ecosystems and why. And it was really informative, and it's an interesting document. I think people even outside of the conservation community have enjoyed reading it. And also, I think will give us a great basis for making future strategic decisions on what to focus on and protect moving forward. So there's that. We also have a major Hillside woods restoration project going on right now. So we did a tree planting there. We'll do another one this year, over 100 trees, and we're fencing in areas and looking at trying to regenerate species, especially native species, and planting. So that's another big hands-on conservation project. I could name, there are a bunch more, but yes, it's definitely a substantial part of our work to date, and will, I'm sure, continue to be.
One thing I'd like to add to that is that, and this is all part of CSC things that you can get points for. Most communities have produced, and I believe the mayor can correct me on this, that they have to have a comprehensive plan. And this is a term of art. It's an actual document, large document that involves planning not just for roads and bridges and stuff like that, but also for the trees and all that stuff. The comprehensive plan, depending upon how good it is something that you can go to right now that tells you what your community has planned to do for a long period of time, over a long span, and what direction it's going to go in. And some of that involves the preservation and maximization of natural resources. Also, another thing that is required if you want to get the points is whether are you a tree city? tree city is a term of art. It is an actual entity. You actually get awarded if you are a tree city. And Mayor Pugh, did you want to speak anything about tree cities?
That's I believe that's through the Arbor Day Council. We actually just renewed our tree city status at the recent meeting of the Board of Trustees. I think that most municipalities in Westchester County are already doing what they need to do to qualify, which is typically recognizing Arbor Day and devoting a minimum of $2 per capita to the maintenance of your urban and suburban forests. And most DPW departments are doing that and beyond.
And if they are doing that, get the points for it. As was mentioned by Mary and Carla Armacost, you probably have done a whole bunch of good things. If there's one thing I would have liked to have had at the very beginning of this process, would be a list of stuff already done. So I wouldn't have to go and find out, oh, this is already done, that's already done, who do I go to get it? To have a comprehensive list of the activities that your community has done that might be even slightly related to environment or whatever, have that all in one place. Take that, that's your shopping list of how to turn that into documentation to then get the points under CSC.
Excellent. So now there is another series of questions that are being posed as to methodologies in terms of greenhouse gas inventories and how these were accessed. Could you very quickly, I know that there's a lot of material, could Mary and Lindsay, could you very quickly just mention the kinds of tools that you did to benchmark your buildings? And I want to be clear before we get into that question, there are questions as to whether the school system, that is, and or not-for-profits are part of this. Ideally, they should be, because the name says climate smart communities and clean energy communities. But right now, as of right now, and Lindsay and I and Mary and we've all talked about it, right? As of now, what's being benchmarked within clean energy communities is municipal buildings. And in the Climate Smart portal, you have a little bit more flexibility. To Lindsay's point, there is that comprehensive plan within which all your community residents are supposed to be involved. But could you, Mary and Lindsay and Mayor Armacost, Mayor Pugh, just address briefly what are the tools you used for greenhouse gas inventories that worked in your respective communities and to this point?
I'm happy to start. We relied quite heavily on ICLEI's ClearPath tool. It's a wonderful tool, and it's been around for about a decade. So it's gotten better over the years, and it makes the process much easier. So and they do a lot of handholding. We're members of ICLEI, so we can rely on them to help us, and they've gone through this process dozens of times with other municipalities. So they'll help you say, okay, you should reach out to this person at Con Ed and work specifically on how to get the numbers you need, and then how to input it. And also it spits out wonderful graphs that you can cut and paste right into your inventory. So it's a very valuable tool, and I recommend it. I know there are others out there as well, so I don't know if there others are as good, but I can definitely recommend that one.
If I can just add, Jim, I don't know how you say his name properly.
Jim Yenga.
Who created the utility registry. That's also an incredibly useful tool. I'll see if I can copy that and pop it into the chat for people. But that's also an incredibly useful tool. And then on schools, I know the dilemma you're referring to. There are ways to partner with schools, and the CSC, being the CSC, it's got quite strict rules about it, about what counts as a partnership, but there are ways to partner with schools. So for example, our school is going to be putting solar on the roof, which will count for community solar, and we will be able to partner in that context. But it's a municipal program, and I think everyone knows there's a wall between municipalities and schools by law in in New York. So we have to be a little bit careful about some of that stuff, but there are ways to collaborate.
If I may,
Posted a piece on utility registry. Go ahead, Lindsay.
We have an interlock with the school's environmental sustainability committee. I'm on that committee, and we saw what the schools were doing, and we saw the able to persuade them to move ahead and do a second energy performance contract. They had done one 10 years ago. An energy performance contract is a process by which they don't have to put up any money, but they can pay back the savings that are done through either lighting upgrades, solar or whatever. And the state supports this process, and the Department of Education supports it as well. So we got them to do that. And you just should keep one thing in mind. Sometimes you have to be a little pushy to get somewhere. We were pushing the schools to do benchmarking for 2 years, and they couldn't seem to quite do it. And then I realized, of course, wait a minute, there's the freedom. So I just demanded under a freedom of information request all of the information. It took about 4 or 5 months. We got it. We benchmarked the schools. We showed them how much they were using and how much greenhouse gases they were creating, not just from their buildings, but also from their vehicles. Sometimes you have to find other ways to push things along. People may get a little upset when they say, oh, well, we were going to do that. We were going to do that. But if something doesn't happen in a year, it's not going to happen. And you may have to find other ways around it. And working with our schools, we have also helped them on a number of their other issues. And I believe strongly that if they have an existing environmental committee in the school, become part of it. Have one of your members of your sustainability committee also be a member of that. So there are interlocks going forward on these activities.
All right, so now I'm not sure how much longer we want to keep these lovely people who are attending, but there's a couple of things I want to summarize. There is a great need for people to be able to share information. So you in Croton on Hudson and Hastings on Hudson, you know, given your community focus and given your leadership, with leadership comes sometimes responsibilities, as Mayor Pugh had mentioned to us. You know, I'm hoping that we can share that there's requests being put in the chat session for folks to share their information. And I know, Lindsay, you had mentioned that there's this opportunity to learn with the ELA workshop. I would like to encourage Mary and Lindsay as the, you know, sort of doer, the worker bees for their great mayors, to share their information with some of the participants. We're going to get the list of registered participants. And if there's a way to share your folder tree, your organizing principles, that entire thing would be very useful. The other piece to remember is that, you know, we talked about this. These are communities programs that really are municipal driven, but the partnership between municipalities and other community entities is also key. And I don't want people to leave this workshop thinking, to Lindsay's point and to Mary and Nikki and Mayor Pugh's point, that they have worked very actively in these communities to engage all their community residents. So you are successful not just because you are climate smart, you know, you've mastered the art of those programs and those portals, but you have long histories of engaging with your community residents. And I would like to just end on that note, but if there's anyone in the audience that really has a burning question that you feel that we haven't answered, I would like you to unmute yourself and pose that question, please. No? Are we in that rare moment where we've answered all questions? Oh, so we have a very interesting question right now, and this is something going forward, which I want to thank all other sponsors. I want to end on this note. The League of Women Voters has done us a tremendous service in terms of informing and engaging Westchester municipalities. And I see a question that's being asked of Sustainable Westchester, but it's also true of all the sponsors of this event. Can you set up a workspace with channels for different categories where municipalities' sustainability committee members could communicate with each other in real time and on a regular basis? Sent by Marianne. Excellent question. Something to be taken forward, because this is something that I know Mary and Lindsay and all of you have already talked about. Do you want to address it, any of you? This possibility?
We've actually been pulling this together. We have 4 interns, and several of them have been working on putting together the bones of a chat room and already collecting the emails of people who might be interested in being part of it. We hope to have that finished before the summer, and then we can bring it either to HVRC or anybody else, and as a framework, if you will, and piece of software, and then you can try and take that and expand it to go out to everybody else. But we believe that was very important, and we're moving ahead on that independently.
So there's an opportunity to partner with Sustainable Westchester. Maria, would you
Yes,
care to take
am
that
I
question?
muted? I'm sorry. Yes, hi. So yeah, we are in fact also looking at, we just had that big meeting on April 1st, and we're looking at sort of pulling together some of that information in a cohesive way. And we're interested, obviously, we see ourselves playing an important role in that. So we're interested in making that happen. So we'll be back in touch, and Lindsay and I are working together on a bunch of initiatives. So we'll surely chat about what he has going on. One of the other things we've talked about, but maybe for a little further down the road, maybe in the fall, creating a situation where we can all get together again, our municipal members and their committees, and around various different topics that we can dig deeper into. But we'll come back to you all with more information.
So to the participants, we will come back to you with the possibility, Sustainable Westchester and Lindsay and all other engaged, interested parties will come back to you with the possibility of a shared workspace. Mary and Lindsay will come back to you with the possibility of tools that they've used, their folder tree, their strategies. Mayor Armacost and Mayor Pugh will be active champions in collaborative competition with their neighbors, as they are already doing, spurring bigger municipalities to do half as much as they are doing. And then this piece on getting support is very key. The Clean Energy Communities coordinators, I am transitioning to work directly with NYSERDA on energy codes and standards, but my colleagues at HVRC actually do provide free technical advice. So Westchester municipalities are well positioned to write to their HVRC coordinator, and my slide deck will be available. And I thank the League of Women Voters and Sustainable Westchester for posting all of our slide decks. And you can access help directly. And I see that Mary Lambert and Mayor Pugh have put in their email addresses. I'm not sure if Lindsay is willing to do that as well, and that would be excellent. So feel free to contact all of us. And I want to say a huge thank you to the League of Women Voters, a huge thank you to Sustainable Westchester, to FCWC, and Ella for hosting us. And the biggest thank you goes to these leaders. Thank you, Mary, Lindsay, Nikki, and Brian. Go.
Thanks
If there's
for
anything
having
else
us.
that anyone wants to add, Kathy, do you have any farewell closing words for us?
No, you have handled it beautifully, Anila. Thank you so much. Thank you, mayors, for being with us today, as well as Mary and Lindsay. And of course, to my team, Susan Swartz, Camilla Calhoun, and Marcia Brewster, thank you for working with us behind the scenes. This will be posted later today on our website, as I've been posting in the chat room. So again, I hope you all, distribute our video and let others see all that you talked about today. So thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you to the league and the powerful women that run it. On that note, yay, bye-bye.